The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Failure to stop.
I'm in the wrong spot, damn it.
What?
There we go.
We've already pissed. Like, we just started and Dan is already pissed off. Come on,
to be fair, I woke up pissed off, so it's fine.
Guys, we live in a world, we are broadcasting this show in a world in which Derek Chauvin is serving 22 years and Bill Cosby just got out after raping 60 women.
Maybe that's the number. At 60, they all cancel each other out. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. What strange times. Has it always been this way though, and we're just more hyper aware of it?
Are you asking, has it always been where wealthy and powerful people with connections are able to skirt the criminal justice system?
Has it always just been this same shit show in a different form? Yeah, I agree. Sure, I think people are people, and as long as humanity has existed, it's the same situation.
People would get away with what you allow them to get away with, right? I mean, that's how it works. It's no different than raising children. They're going to push limits constantly, and the more you let them get away with, the more they're going to try.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. So if you guys tuned in to figure out the problem with humanity, we've pretty much solved that issue. Well, we've exposed it anyway. So what's up, Eric? You've got a brand new, fresh haircut.
I do. I no longer look like a lesbian. Or maybe I still do.
That is debatable. I don't know that.
A cleaned up looking lesbian, I would say.
You're like a lesbian before she goes in for a job interview. That's what you're looking at now.
Yeah.
Hey, so man, we are still trying to be competitive, guys, in the rankings. So as you tune into the podcast today, if you're listening live or watching live on YouTube or Facebook, when all is said and done here, hey, go especially to iTunes. It's like where the king of all rankings is driven or whatever. Go there, follow it. I think they even changed it. You don't even subscribe anymore. You follow. Podcast is trying to turn into social media. Whatever. Go follow the Failure to Stop podcast. Drop a rating. Write a review. Do all that stuff. And if we read your review last week and we promised you swag or we promised you shit that we were going to send, we realized after we said that we were going to do that we have no way to just send you stuff. So if we read your stuff and promised you anything, you're going to have to go on to Failure to Stop on Instagram and send us a DM and prove that it was you. And then we'll send you stuff as a thank you for writing a glowing review. So Tansey, did you find any ones that caught your attention this week?
Yeah, I think it's crazy, man. We're up way over 500 written reviews.
No, we've got 500 some ratings.
500 ratings. That's insane to me that many people have already taken the time to go to iTunes alone and do that. That's pretty wild. Yes,
that's a lot of sexual favors you called in at the fire department to get that many guys to do that.
Yeah. You like how I just procrastinated there and just talked while I tried to pull up a review to read because I forgot.
Yeah, it's
I'm just kidding.
Really good skill you have there. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I had already saved one. My favorite one of the week was, oh shit, that's not the right one. Let's see.
Man, that's riveting stuff right there.
Here it is. Mike the Cop and Eric owe my mom child support. Threw the 5-star out there so they would hopefully see this before they put the writ out. That was my favorite this week.
Yeah, good luck finding me. I'm the Lizard King. You don't even know my name.
Yeah, that's Robert California right there, folks. For those of you who aren't fans in The Office, you can't stump me with any kind of TV quote, by the way, because of autism.
Speaking of The Office, I went to you'll remember the Hooters episode, right? Where Michael Scott takes Jim to Hooters when he thinks they're really connecting and bonding over this Pam secret. Well, I took our Hump Day hero, Jeremy Yano, a Deputy Yano from Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department here in Michigan, I'll tell the story here in a second about why he was our Hump Day hero. But I'm like, man, I'm going to go buy you a beer, take you out, say thank you, just connect with him. And so he says, hey, how's this place here? And it's called Twin Peaks. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. It's basically like
Hooters.
A different version of Hooters or something or whatever. And I'm still fascinated by anyone who thinks that going to Hooters or going to Twin Peaks to see boobs is worth it. I mean, you can see those for free. Do guys know that? Do guys know that you can actually see breasts for free?
Two things on that. One, you're being awfully generous, assuming your audience hasn't heard of Twin Peaks. Give me a break, dude. Come on. Every single person in here has been to a Twin Peaks. I promise you that, including the women. But you're right about that. This device we're using right now to communicate with one another, I can see whatever I want without having to pay anybody for it or hear anybody talk, which is something I don't really like to do, is listen to people talk. So, yeah, I mean, we're definitely developing into a bunch of mole people. We're all going to be living underground, just experiencing everything through these screens at some point soon.
Strange. But anyway, I take him there, and I'm like, as soon as I walk in, I sit down, and I'm like, I feel like I need to order the chicken breast, hold the chicken. And there was just no reference. Yano, man, you got to watch The Office. He's like, I've seen some episodes. I'm like, what's wrong with you? I'm taking away your Hump Day hero status, man.
Yeah.
If you don't know an Office reference, get out. Just get out.
We just had Office trivia at our distillery this week, and a woman who works in law enforcement actually won. So
I love it. Hey, if I come down there to the distillery and we do a live show, can we do Office trivia again? Because I really want to test myself.
For you, we'll do anything, Mike.
Anything?
Anything. Within reason.
We can call it Twin Peaks Distillery for the night?
Speaking of Twin Peaks, I took my wife to Hooters for Mother's Day.
I want to see your Twin Peaks. I want you to be in like a top that emphasizes, I like that. Guys, if you're listening and you're not on the live show, you are missing it. I'm telling you. The Hump Day hero this week, Deputy Yano. So here's how this came up. I'm like Facebook friends with one of his lieutenants, like on my personal Facebook, and she posts this thing. So she was accompanying him out to somewhere on the west side of the state for a MAD award, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and so he was nominated for like Rookie of the Year for his efforts there. And so he's out there getting this certificate, and they're driving back to Washtenaw County, which is where Ann Arbor is. Go Blue. And so they end up seeing this accident unfold with this RV. And when I say RV, I mean like it's the drivable kind, not the pull behind trailer kind. It's like an actual, like you drive the RV and you have bedrooms in it and all that stuff. So this accident unfolds in front of them. It was terrible weather this week in Michigan. It was like raining, flooding, all this stuff. There was like pictures, videos of jet skis. Guys were out jet skiing and near downtown Detroit on the expressway because it flooded so bad. But so they see this accident happen. They end up realizing there's this elderly dude inside in the front who is driving. They smash the front windshield out, and this is not their jurisdiction. They just see this, and there's no other first responders there yet. So they kind of like hop into action. He busts through the windshield, gets the dude out. He's like, hey, my wife's trapped in the back. She was sleeping. It's an elderly couple. She's on oxygen. So he crawls through the back, and part of the RV had collapsed, trapping her in the back. So he kind of worms his way in there, and then it further collapses. And now they're both trapped in there. And then this RV catches on fire. So the lieutenant's outside, like she's getting fire extinguishers. There's other people, like now bystanders are helping. Other first responders are showing up. They get the fire out, but it's 40 minutes till they can extract them out. So Deputy Yano's in there keeping her calm, holding on to her, trying to kind of like shield the collapse from her. And she's got a dog back there that's biting the piss out of his arm. All this is happening for 40 minutes until they extract them out. They all go to the hospital. Long story short, everybody's going to be fine. She's recovering. He's already, back to work and all that stuff. But that's caught my attention. So I'm like, hey, beer's on me. And Twin Peaks it was. No Office references were understood. But I guess I'll let the Hump Day hero stand this week for Deputy Yano. So good job, buddy.
Like how extreme does it get with the Office references? The the LA County Sheriff, the lady that got shot in the neck that maintained security over her guy. She's doing better, by the way. We've seen some pictures of her recently. Yeah. If she doesn't get the office representative, we're going to light her up too, because I just want to know where the line is. For me, it's nowhere. There is no line. I don't care what you do. Dakota Meyer has a Medal of Honor. If he doesn't get my office references, I'll kick him right in his nuts.
I agree, man. There is no one that can escape the prerequisite of needing to understand the office as a way to see the world. So
right.
I agree with that. So
especially now, like the English language is morphing into basically just meme references all the time. It's basically not. It's basically like you don't speak the language at this point if you're not watching these shows. So
yeah, there was something I was reading, guys. If you're watching live and when you listen to this and you're like, I thought this was about government-sponsored sex trafficking or human trafficking. Yes, it is. We'll get there, but we got to smoke and joke a little bit. So, I read this reference about we read history. So, like, if we discovered some ancient document, that there's references to sort of like pop culture of the time, whether it's Greek or Roman culture, that we just don't understand. And we can try to piece it together. So it's kind of like if we were writing a memoir and it was discovered in the year 4000 and it's me writing a letter or sending a text to Dan and Eric that says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Mike the Cop. And somebody be like, what does that even mean? And they're going to have historians later on trying to decipher what this is, although maybe everything will be digitally retained in the future.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I do like trolls like that though. The John McAfee, that whole thing, he failed because he was too ham-handed with it. But you could tell with that whole schwacked tattoo and all this stuff, he was definitely trying to troll people and make people think the government killed him. He killed himself. Let's be real about that. But he definitely tried to do it, and I love that. If you can go out on it with a there's a comedian, I can't remember his name, but he said, if you just feel like, ending it, why don't you jump off the Empire State Building and try to land in a glass of water? So people are like, wait, did he really think he could do that? You know what I mean? Just go out with a question mark is what he says. And I think that's hilarious.
That's certainly one way to do it.
Like that, you've heard that thing about pay a celebrity to show up to your funeral or whatever. So people are like, wait, did he know this guy? What the hell is this stuff? Oh, that's definitely what I'm going to do.
What celebrity would you pay to have at your funeral?
Ooh,
anybody?
Boy, I don't know. That's a good question, man. Probably somebody like Bill Cosby, I guess. I don't know.
Bill Cosby, putting pops for everyone at my funeral.
Yeah,
I'd get Britney Spears to show up to mine.
If her dad will let her.
Some congresswoman and I think with the GOP invited her to testify in front of Congress now. So this should get. I mean.
What is that? I'm so sick of everybody testifying in front of Congress. Congress needs to go away. We should. Dude. Yeah, defund politicians. It's nuts. Why does everybody got to go in front of Congress? This is nuts, man. Whatever. All right, we gotta. Yeah. I want to get to the issue at hand, but first I want to ask you, Dan, if you've any run-ins. Do you have any memorable run-ins with the cops? So obviously you're here with us on a cop-themed show, but do you have any memorable run-ins with police?
Oh boy, who put you up to this?
Nobody. This is just, it came to me at about 1:30 in the morning when I couldn't sleep and I was drinking bourbon. I was like, I got it. I got the question of the day.
Well, I haven't. I've been arrested a number of times, but not since I was 19. I'm 40 now. I've been arrested multiple times for manufacturing LSD. That's the only thing I've ever been arrested for. And I've got a great excuse for it. It was too expensive, so I made it myself. Everybody's on to this DIY stuff, and if I built my own fucking refrigerator at home, I'd be a hero and a craftsman. But because I did it with LSD, somehow it's a problem. Get out of here. Don't believe that.
So how did you get caught, I guess, man? Like how did the police ever get involved in that?
Just some dude told them, and they couldn't prove anything. I never got convicted of anything. I did pay a ticket for weed one time when I was like 18, I think, but I haven't had a whole lot of run-ins with the cops because I don't act like an idiot. I mean, I do a lot of crazy things, but this is a thing that we teach people. If you do UC work, especially during your career, you will have gotten this information as well. And Tansey, you would have heard about this being around the group guys. If you just act like you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be and are polite, nobody will fuck with you. Like seriously, just be polite and no one will fuck with you. it's not a matter of even respecting police. If you're a person that doesn't like cops or whatever, it's not even about that. Why antagonize somebody that has the ability to fuck with you? What could you possibly hope to gain by doing that? I've got shit to do. I want to go home. You know what I mean? I just want to go home and be alone and fucking go on my boat with my girlfriend. That's what I want to do. So if I can be like, go ahead.
If you live by the 3 rules of special operations, which you learn right in the schoolhouse, it's rule number 1 is always look cool. Rule number 2 is always know where you're at. And rule number 3 is if you don't know where you're at, act cool and pretend like you know where you're at. And I think that all fits into what you just said. If you're just acting cool and act like you know what's up, nobody's going to fuck with you.
And the thing about that is if you act cool long enough, you will become, when I say cool, I don't mean like, oh, he's so cool. I mean like if you just act like a polite, normal person long enough, you will become that person. It'll become second nature to you to just be like, oh yeah, thank you, sir, or ma'am, or whatever the fuck. Why not? What do you like? What point is anybody trying to prove by being a dick to people? I don't get it.
Well,
doesn't make any sense.
And that's the key, guys. If you want to manufacture your own LSD, just be nice. Just be polite about it, and everything's going to be fine. Eric, how about you? Did you ever have any run-ins with the police before you were the police, like growing up at all?
Growing up, I went and spotted deer one time with some friends. They
you say spotted? Oh, you said deer or beer?
Deer. They were rednecks, and they were friends of mine. And there was 2 trucks, and they were like, "Come on, we're gonna go spotting deer." And they weren't killing them; they were just spotting them with spotlights and whatever, going through these hunting clubs. And
that's still illegal, though, right? To spotlight you, to shoot them.
Yes, but at 16 or 17, I had no idea.
Right.
I didn't even know what spotting deer was. I knew of it, but I was like, it's just something cool. And there was 2 pretty girls I'm still friends with to this day, and they were in the truck in front of us. And so it's kind of like, these girls are here. I want to get in on this. And so they had gotten out of the trails before we did, and were parked on the side of the road with their lights off. And the guy that I was with decided to leave the trails at a high rate of speed and was just going to like jump his truck out onto the road and spin sideways and whatever. Anyway, he ends up creaming into the side of this truck with the girls in it, and the door folded over, and we had to call 911 because the door was like collapsed over her leg. And so when 911 gets there, the EMS medic is her mother. And all the cops are there. Yeah. And her mom was like, "What are you doing at this time of night out here with these boys?" And she goes, "We were just out here spotting deer.
We're just spotting deer, mama."
And the cops were like, "What?" And so then it became a real big deal. And they actually impounded both trucks, and everything in the trucks was lost. And I got taken home to my parents. That was my first run-in with police.
That's a hey y'all watch this kind of situation, and if anybody around you says hey watch this, just turn around and walk the other direction. There's no point in even staying to see what happens. You can see it later on the fucking news.
Yeah, Andy, put that comment up. That's a good one. Hiram Bifidum says, memorable run-in with the police. They found me sleeping in Dunkin' Donuts eating Akplar rations. There's a video on YouTube about that.
That's pretty good. Look, if you're going to do some dumb shit, at least make it funny. You know what I mean?
My run-in was, I was 16. And well, I've had a couple different run-ins with the police when I was 16, 17. But the one that I'll share today was that my parents were getting ready to leave out of town, and I had pissed my dad off or whatever, and he said that I was grounded, right? And I'm 16. I'm like, Dad, I mean, what are you gonna do? I'm 16, you know. And later on, I would actually get punched in the face and knocked out by my dad at about the same age. So it turns out my dad could do something about it. So I actually snuck his extra spare set of keys, and he had this Pontiac Grand Prix that I thought was glorious because it had one of those car phones in it, like literally mounted in the middle with the thing in the trunk, you know, with the antenna. And I just thought, like, when I was in that car, I was like a total baller.
Oh, you rich.
And, yeah. So we, my brother had a half day at school, and I picked him up from school. So I basically stole my dad's car. I mean, like, it's his car, and I didn't have the keys to it. I stole his keys, and I go and pick my brother up and all of his friends. We load into this car, and I think, like, man, I literally made a couple of phone calls on this car phone to who I don't know. I probably paged my friends, like their beepers, so that they would call my dad's car phone back or whatever. So I'm flying down the road to impress my brother and his friends or whatever, and I got lit up, and we got like a seatbelt tickets or whatever else, and so then I got busted by the cops for I didn't get the speeding ticket. They just wrote me a seatbelt violation or whatever. But then I got the ticket, and I had to deal with that. So it showed up for my dad. So then I got caught.
You know what I want? I want like a real cops of every city telling their stories about how you're on the last 45 minutes of your patrol shift and some asshole does something like that and you spend the next 3 hours writing paperwork. Because he's not mad at you for speeding or not wearing your seatbelt. He's mad because you just ruined his entire day and he's probably coming off the double, you idiot.
Exactly. There's the reason behind the reason. It's rarely because of the violation itself. It's
right.
And then again, then it's like being polite. It's like how many people have just like talked themselves into the hammer dropping on a ticket because they just want to be a dick. You know, it's like, okay, fine. You want to be that way? I can play that game. I've taken a ticket up to someone's window and it was like, let's say that they were going like 27 over. So I come up there with a 5 over ticket, right? And I'm like, all right, hey man, I cut you a break. It's 5 over. Like, you got to be kidding me, Bob. I'm like, you know what? Hold on. Just wait right here. I go back. I just amend the ticket. I add something else. I add like a rolling stop sign. I come back. I'm like, hey, you know what? Because you rolled the stops, I just added that too. Oh, I didn't do that. I got it on the dash cam. It's on there. I just added that. You know, fuck you. Like, okay, I'll be right back. Just one more moment, sir. And I go back. I just keep doing that until we're done. And we've got like 5 or 6 things on there. It's like, you want to play the game? I'll play the game. You know, I'm not in the mood for this. So if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make it worth my time now. So that happens.
Man,
I don't know.
So I was just the opposite because like whenever I pulled somebody over, like my whole goal in life was try to get them to apologize to me. So I would just sit there and just like explain to try to get voluntary compliance and then just be like without saying, all you have to do is say you're sorry. I won't write you a ticket. I would try to gain this voluntary compliance. And the minute they say, you know what, man, I'm sorry I was an asshole. And I really didn't mean to say I was coming from your mom's house. It was funny, but it was inappropriate. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give you a warning today, homeboy. And if I had to spend 30 minutes at that door to get that voluntary, I'm sorry, I would do it. And they wouldn't get a ticket. I probably have a world record for the most warnings ever given by a cop.
That's some super low scale operant conditioning you're doing there. You just have to find a way to make that into a train the trainer situation so it passes on throughout the environment.
There you go.
Yeah, because if you can get an I'm sorry out of somebody, then they're probably never going to do it again. And then I also feel better going home knowing that I didn't fucking ruin that dude's day. And then at the same time, I got exactly what I wanted, which was him to be sorry for going 65 and a 35.
I think my warning to ticket ratio had to be in the 90%. Like,
yeah.
I gave so many warnings.
If not like 99%.
Yeah,
you had to be a real piece of shit to get a ticket from me, like a real dickhead to get a ticket from me.
I was never a traffic dude, like pulling people over for traffic crap.
I always wrote a ticket to the one guy though. Like, you know, when you're driving down the road and there's that one guy that you're like, why won't somebody fucking give that asshole a ticket? If I could ever find that guy, which is hard to do as a cop, when you find that guy,
people driving in the left-hand turn lane like it's a lane, I'll give that guy a ticket.
Just being dickheads.
My buddy back in the day had this idea for something called American points. And you would lose, you started out your life with 10,000 American points, and once you got to 0, you get deported, right?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I love it.
That's
driving in the left-hand lane, the passing lane when you're not passing, you lose like 50 points right there. I mean, that's a pretty high level infraction.
What a great way. I've thought about the same thing, like, because I hate the fact that tickets are... There's money. So I get it. You want to hit people in the pocketbook, but I absolutely cannot stand the fact that money is attached to civil infractions. I hate it. So I thought, and then we would have this discussion like with other cops, like, well, what would you do instead, smart guy? I'd be like, this is a no-brainer to me. What I would do is say, when you get your license, you start with 100 points, whatever it is, and you get stopped speeding, boom, you're 98. You get caught, running over a child. Okay, you -4, whatever. Like you just work your way down. You get to 0. All right, you don't have a license anymore. You never had to pay anything, but you lose the privilege if you screw up too many times. You want to be an idiot? Then so be it.
My only problem with the Bill of Rights, and that's a bold statement to make at a cop.
That is coming from you.
Here we go.
With the Bill of Rights is the 8th Amendment. I understand. Prohibiting cruel punishment. I'm fine with that because there's no place for that. But unusual punishment is something that I use to great success as a non-commissioned officer in the 82nd Airborne. People don't like to be humiliated. They hate it. They hate it more than pain. They hate it more than losing money. They hate it more than anything else. People will do anything they can to avoid being embarrassed.
Yeah.
So I feel like that should be a weapon in your tool belt because there's no real consequence. There's no physical or financial consequence to that. It's just shame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. The
Yeah,
driver of shame.
I became private I am because one of the instructors said the next person that says I am, because it was, always dark outside, and they're like, who's in charge of this? And he's like, next person that just answers I am and not your name, you're fucked. And at some point he was like, who's got, who's in charge of the nods? And I was like, I am. He was like, come here. So I had to go get nameplates that said I am, and I had to sew them onto my thing, and I became private I am.
We used to make, if a guy lost his ID card, we would make like a full-on giant placard. Like he would have to draw the entire DA, Department of the Army ID card and wear that bitch around his neck for like a week every time. I mean, that's not a real punishment. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, you were a jackass. This is kind of fun for everybody. Now we can all move on with our lives. But
it was unusual.
It's certainly unusual, but according to the U.S. Constitution, it's not okay. And maybe we need to think about that. Maybe we need
if the Supreme Court can dance around what the Second Amendment really the intent is, it can dance around the unusual intent. So let's figure it out. All right. So speaking of the U.S. government and what we've got going on there, human trafficking. So Dan, you've done a lot of homework. You've been in this world. What's interesting to me is supposedly Detroit is been on a hot spot for sex trafficking, which I don't. That's one of my initial questions: is where does human trafficking for whether it may be other purposes that are not sexual or sex trafficking intersect? But supposedly Detroit is one of the hotbeds. We have all these hotels around the airport and all this stuff, and I know DHS has teams of people that are supposedly in and around the hotels trying to sort of deal with this. But as a cop, prostitution, was always sort of a prevalent issue in hotels. But I never, in my experience of assisting detectives or task force around that, my exposure to that, never really found it going significantly further than the actual criminal act itself around the charges from that. They never went further. And I gotta admit, outside of the sex trafficking aspect and thinking I've heard or understood that a lot of the porn industry is sex trafficking involved and forced labor, or I feel relatively
from Canada, by the way. It's not even we think of sex trafficking as Eastern European or Latino or people like that, or Asian, but the porn industry in America there's a high propensity of young Canadian women that for some reason end up in LA County or Las Vegas doing porn kind of again. It's very bizarre the way it works. To your point though about it being I don't even know how you would phrase that, but it's almost there's so many different inflection points where people are protecting the people that are involved in this. Now we saw it with the Epstein thing and now the Ghislaine Maxwell. And I don't know if it's because there are other interests involved, like his financial and political interest, or with what we're going to talk about today with the immigration interest, the way it looks bad, the way the government's handling it or whatever. I don't know if they're protecting because of that or because they're actually involved in something more nefarious. It's hard to say, right? I mean, the principle of charity says you give people the benefit of the doubt. And I try to do that, but when it's this mountain of evidence and it's right here in plain view for everyone to see and nobody's doing anything to stop it, that's where my principle of charity goes out the window and I start, knife handing people hey, what the fuck are you doing about this?
Yeah, there's been over the last 6 months to a year, I would say the public sort of hashtag awareness of human trafficking has increased. And I've been sitting here going hey, I want to do something about this. And I've talked to different people about organizations that are trying to, curb or stop or go after traffickers and stuff like that. And so you've got sort of a lot of paramilitary type operations happening where they're doing recon and then they're turning stuff over to active law enforcement. And I'm how can I get involved? What's really going on here? Because I think obviously you don't put a Band-Aid on a skin cancer patient. You got to attack the source, like what's really going on. So I'm hoping to hear from you, obviously, on educate me and Tansey and the people watching and listening. What the hell is going on with trafficking? And what's the source as you understand it? And what are we going to do about it? I don't know. Just go to take us to school here.
We'll get into it. I'll see this opening up though. And a lot of people ask me that question after they hear what they're going to hear today. They ask me, well, what can I do about it? And the most important thing you can do is share the information, because at some point it becomes undeniable and unignorable. Well, we're in a situation in America, particularly right now, when everyone's full of shit, telling the truth becomes an act of rebellion. And in some cases, if you're speaking truth to power, as we like to call it, it could be an act of war. The King of England once said to John Adams, "An honest man will have no other." And I would add to that a liar will not tolerate the truth. So you need to be prepared to defend yourself, to defend the truth, even if it costs you everything, because there are people out there that can't defend themselves. The purpose of power and masculinity and all these things that are under attack right now are to provide and protect. That's all they exist for. There's no intrinsic value, good or evil to it. It just exists to exist, right? So leverage those things that you have at your disposal and hold people accountable for the fucking lies they tell. That's what I'll tell you before we get into all this stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just saying, just to, because we're getting into the show and everything like that. Currently, right now in the world, there's 40.5 million people enslaved in the world, approximately, which is more slaves than we've ever had in the history of the world. 2.5 million. Yep.
That really puts
40.5
kneeling
million
for the anthem in perspective.
It really does, especially since we're a country that's, one of the leading countries in abolishing slavery, like one of the first, right? We were the first country to abolish slavery.
I believe England was a little bit ahead of us.
Okay. 2.5 million infants to 14-year-old are strictly sold into slavery for sex purposes. 2.5 million approximately. And the most slaves in the world actually currently are in Africa, where there are an estimated 20.5 million in slave trade. And that's just human trafficking, not just for sex. They're selling body organs. You can look up the Moody murders, where they're trading organs for voodoo purposes and things like that, for healing causes. So human trafficking in of itself is a massive problem. 40.5 million is a huge number. We talk about the COVID pandemic. We talk about those numbers, but we don't really hear a lot of people talking about the 40.5 million people who are enslaved.
Is it as simple as it doesn't fit the narrative? Is it that simple? Why the hell is this? Why is this not like the story until it's not a story anymore? Like how does this even happen? Like what?
Well, I mean, it's been happening.
Why the hell is that like that?
It's been happening for a lot longer than we've been paying attention to it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that number 40.5 is low. I mean, there's all sorts of other stuff going on, and it's because of the institutions involved, frankly, that it doesn't get exposed. Think institutions like the Catholic Church, for example, which I know a lot of people have gripes with one way or another, but they've been stealing kids from people and then fucking not for sex trafficking or anything, although I'm sure there's probably some of that going on at a lower level, but the church at large has been taking kids and then putting them into foster care, and then for Catholic families that are looking to adopt children because they want the kids to stay Catholic, right? It's like some bajillion-year-old nonsense that's still happening today. So I think the numbers that I've heard are more like 46 million, but look, it doesn't matter. It is a massive, massive problem, bigger than it has ever been, right?
Maybe the best way to get over slavery in America is to start doing something about slavery elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
oh my gosh,
that's something I always say. If you can turn, and I think slavery was a national tragedy for America. It's a blight. Absolutely. It's a blight on an otherwise amazing story, and there's a number of blights, but it's something. It is certainly our national shame. And I say this all the time. If you can turn your pain into empathy for other people, then you could save two lives, yours and theirs. And this is a situation where we have failed as a moral leader in this country in so many ways, but probably no greater way than that one.
Wow. So where did this all start for you? Like, how did you start digging into this stuff?
Well, the story began for me when my buddy James Klug, I don't know if you know him or not, he's an independent reporter. He started getting reports from people and seeing himself these manila envelope packets, right, in airports where people, illegal immigrants, were being given manila envelope, and on one side it says, "I don't speak English, please help me find whatever the fuck it says," and then on the other side it has their itinerary and inside cash and travel documents. So basically,
like when they're being given these by somebody, or they're just there, like.
Oh, they're being given to them, yes.
Okay.
After they cross the border. So, long investigation into what this stuff was, interviewing a bunch of people, and then I started seeing it myself sometime around April of this year. A number of times at Dallas Fort Worth Airport, a couple of other airports, New Jersey, just all over the country, really. And then I started seeing kids. Right? I'm like, this. Anytime you start seeing kids show up in something that is a known criminal enterprise, there's only a couple of reasons they would be there. You know what I mean? And none of them are good. So my CBP contacts reached out to me after I started posting these videos. I'm like, I saw a guy at Dallas Fort Worth, and he was accompanying probably a 50-year-old Mexican woman. What appeared to be her daughter, probably in her late 20s or early 30s, a man who was probably about the same age, and then 4 children that were somewhere between 3 and 6 years old. Excuse me. So I'm like, I don't have the right to do anything about this, but I'm damn sure gonna fucking record it. So I get right up in the guy's face and take a picture of his face, and I put it on the internet. And not too long after that, a couple of days after that, CBP agents all over the Southwest started reaching out to me through various modes of communication, primarily secure communication. And they told me about this company called MVM Inc. It's that's
NVM,
Mike.
like Nora
No.
Victor Mary?
No, Mike Victor Mike. We use NATO phonetic over here. Get out of here with that Apple bullshit.
Hey, sorry, I was never in the military.
Mike Victor Mike Incorporated and others like it who are contracted by the federal government to ship kids around the country. Now, like a lot of things, this organization probably started out with good intentions. What they were doing was supplementing HSI agents who would have to, just like federal marshals, right? Do prisoner transports or transport people from one location to another for trials or whatever the case is. But I knew based on what I had heard already that that's not what was going on here. There's no accountability in the system. So what we learned was that not only was MVM operating here in the US, but they were also operating, doing something similar to what they were doing government contracts overseas as well, protection contracts and all this other stuff. And then as I looked further into the group, they were doing high-value detainee interrogations, right? So these are probably the worst kind of people you can think of, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think there's any place for this bullshit in this world, but excuse me. Starting around 2014, they started getting these massive ICE contracts, 20 million a year, 48 million a year, 51 million a year, 84 million a year. Then in 18, they got a 5-year contract for $185 million. And basically their contract is to escort, as they call it, undocumented, illegal, whatever you want to call them, and unaccompanied minor, primarily Latino kids all over the country, right? So why? Where are they going? Where are these kids going? A lot of people have been asking the Obama administration where they're going. It started with the Obama administration. The Trump administration wouldn't answer the questions, and now the Biden administration, he doesn't know where he is, so he's certainly not going to answer. Yeah. An investigation from July 2017, right? So this isn't new.
Yeah.
Found that MVM were using unlicensed shelters. Now you're seeing this stuff going on in Texas right now. Abbott just told all these unlicensed shelters that they can close down or they're going to start getting fined and then they're going to get kicked out of the state and so on and so forth. Unlicensed shelters are found all over the place. Arizona State Senator Steve Farley said after this investigation in 2018 that, quote, they've done it without any licensing, obviously, because there's nothing legal about doing this. You don't take kids without a license in Arizona. We also saw the legislature in Tennessee not too long ago say, what the fuck are you guys doing bringing kids into our state in the middle of the night and not telling anybody about it, right? Tansey, you had something to say?
No, but I mean, we saw this that happened like after the Honduran, after the big hurricane that hit, was it not Honduras, but Haiti. And then they were bringing tons of undocumented children for reasons that nobody could explain into Miami.
Yeah, Tansey, you were reminding me about this Hillary Clinton situation, right? With all these kids coming into...
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the, I guess maybe if you want, the part of the conspiracy portion of it. But in real life, without conspiracy, it was like 80-something undocumented children showed up in Miami, and an FBI agent was like, why are you here? How are you? And the kids were like, we have family. We have parents. They just said that they were coming over here for some medical reason. And really nobody could answer for it. And I guess at some point, Hillary Clinton's attorneys were involved because it was part of the Hillary Clinton Foundation that funded the transport of these 80-something children into Miami that nobody could figure out. Of course, I don't know what happened to that because that FBI agent, that director in Miami, she hung herself, I believe, from her doorknob. I'm not kidding.
Boy.
I'm not kidding.
Oh, boy.
That's a real story.
To continue with all this information, so this organization, MVM, and by the way, there's 3 or 4 other major corporations that are just like them, and if you watch the American Party episodes about this, you can see all those. I don't have them in front of me right now, but
so are these? Is MVM made up of like former military people, like handling these operations, or are they just random?
Yeah, so it's it was founded by 3 former U.S. Secret Service agents. Dario Marquez Jr. is the primary guy, and then Charles Vance, who is the son-in-law of Gerald Ford. Imagine that, a guy whose dad was the president getting involved in some nefarious bullshit.
Interesting.
Kevin Marquez, the son of Dario, is now the CEO of that company. They're headquartered in Ashburn, Virginia. And if you go search MVM Inc. and just look down their Indeed page right there, you can see the job postings they have for transporting unaccompanied minors. They require things like language skills and stuff like that. No passports though, so all the kids are staying domestic. That's a key point to make here. So I'm wondering aloud on the show, where the hell are these kids going? Mm-hmm. Like where the fuck are they going? Now what we know now is that they're going to these private contracting facilities that they're basically private prisons for children.
Like a concentration camp.
Essentially, yes. Once we get into the details of that, I'm not going to editorialize. You can make up your own mind about what these camps are, but they're abandoned warehouse. Like those pictures you saw from the border of those kids wrapped up in thermal blankets. That's a good day, right? That's a good day for these kids. So I started poking around, asking questions, talking to CBP, talking to other people that are involved in some of this stuff. As a matter of fact, I've got some interviews coming up with people that work directly for these organizations right now. So if you're out there and you're listening and you think you got away with it, you fucking didn't. The narrative is this. These kids have been through circumstance or violence or something else, separated forcibly from their parents. Now, we know that that's not the case. And here's how we know. The chain of custody goes something like this. The child comes over the border. Usually a coyote will bring the kid over the border. And you can see it on television right now. You can go watch these coyotes tossing the kids over the 25-foot wall, right? Or 26-foot wall, whatever it is. Just dropping this 3- and 5-year-old on their heads, basically. The kids get picked up by CBP. And CBP can only hold them for 72 hours. The first thing they do is try to find their family members or somebody. Because, look, the Biden administration will not do anything with these kids. They won't do anything. The catch and release program that started under Obama is in full effect now. So the child will show up. They'll go to CBP. CBP has 72 hours to try to do something. And what they try to do is reach out to any family member. Well, first it started with the parents. Then they go to a family member. Then they go to anybody that even knows who the kid is and can prove it. And if they can't find any one of those, they send them over to Health and Human Services. And you saw a report about that in the news this week. about what they're doing to kids over there. They go to Health and Human Services, they get a COVID check, and then they get tossed into one of these organizations like Southwest Key programs or others, and disappear off the radar until they're about 18 when we deport them. Right? So, not great. Let's talk about who's Southwest Key. Oh, well, there's one more part of that. Here's the reason we know that they're not being abandoned by their families is this. I have heard the recordings of these phone calls myself. I've seen some of the evidence of this directly. CBP will call the family members. They'll call the parents, they'll call the aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever that are already here in America and say, hey, we've got this kid, he says he belongs to you, is it true? Yes. Well, come pick him up because we can't keep him. Well, no, we're not going to pick him up because you'll deport us. Like, no, we're not going to deport you. Just come pick up your fucking kids. And they still say no. And then the kids get dropped into what is an even less monitored, less funded, and less ethical version of our current foster care system, right? Which is rife with abuse.
Yeah.
Every one of you out there knows somebody who's been through the boys and girls homes, the group homes, the fucking foster care system. Every one of you knows somebody who's done it, and every one of you knows that it's not good. So it's easy to be empathetic and say, shit, man. I mean, these poor kids, and that part you're right. But when you extend it to, these poor families being split apart, which was the narrative under Trump, simply not true.
Yeah.
They were given the opportunity to come claim these kids and basically live for free inside the United States without having to follow any of our rules. And still they wouldn't come pick up the kids. They left them there. So say what you want to about those people, but you can probably figure out how I feel about them.
Man, that's nuts. So this, where has that information taken you further into like government involvement and I guess in that direction?
Right. Well, I mean, the next thing that I wonder is where are the kids going, right? Because just being a throughput for kids or whomever else to go through, that doesn't necessarily make it trafficking, right?
Yeah.
So I started digging a little more, and I came up with this organization. Actually, one of our listeners over at Drink It Bros and American Party reached out to me and tipped me off about this organization called Southwest Key Programs. Excuse me. So Southwest Key Programs is a nonprofit started in 1987. It's actually based in Austin, Texas. It's about a 5-minute drive from my studio back in Austin, which is irritating, but well, we're going to do a show from their steps at some point. Company was founded by a former migrant farm worker named Juan Sanchez, who acted as CEO until 2019 after a number of investigations kind of forced him out. In his first year in operation, what they were doing was housing juvenile offenders on parole. Did that for about, I think, 9 years, and then in '96, the company opened their first child detention centers, and then under the Obama administration, they opened a bunch of them, right? So we all remember the rush on the border from Guatemala and how Hillary Clinton she didn't actually build anything, but oversaw the construction of all these child detention facilities in the southern part of the U.S. That was Southwest Key Programs. Okay. And a number of other ones, but primarily this one. Excuse me. So they now operate 26 shelters for unaccompanied immigrant minors in California, Texas, Arizona, a couple other places. And, in the fiscal year 2018, they received just in 2018 alone, the company received $458 million in revenue from grants to do this. So $500 million in 1 year. Jeez. And that's before it got real. Like, now it's real. Now since from January to June of this year, 122,000 unaccompanied children came over the border.
Oh my god.
122,000. And we're expecting somewhere between 30 and 40,000 a month from now until September.
Yikes, man.
What is your opinion on the kind of the way that this administration is? I mean, I guess you would the lack of border security that we hear so much in the news. Is that more prevalent in this administration than the last?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a confluence of things, but anytime anybody thinks you're weak, let's be real. You have to be realistic about your situation. America's the top dog. There's a target on our back. Even if it's just friendly competition, there's a target on our back. So, people are coming after you all the time. If you project weakness, then you are doing yourself and the people in your country a disservice, because you're going to be attacked. People smell out weakness and they want to attack it, right? That's just how it is. And in this case, weakness is certainly the border. Now, you can debate on how to handle that situation. Personally, I don't think that border walls are very effective long term. They can be effective in the short term as a deterrent, but without the proper enforcement and policy mechanisms, all they do is make smugglers better at their jobs, and they make them cost more money, which means that it becomes a profitable industry, which means the more violent organizations like cartels, for example, get involved in it. And that's exactly what we've seen over the last 20 years. So, you can discuss how to handle it, but nothing is being done right now. So absolutely, this administration is completely fucking this up.
Imagine that.
By the way, just for context, I have a master's degree from Penn State in international homeland security, primarily focused in border security. So I'm not just blowing smoke. Like, this is what I spent years studying.
Man,
and we cannot have fucked this up any worse than we have so far.
What is the government's take on Southwest Key? I mean, Southwest Key is a private, right? Are you saying that Southwest Key is a private company, not a government?
I mean, it's here. I'm going to go through a couple of things with Southwest Key. And look, this is not the only one of these organizations. There's a number of them, but I'm going to go through some of the high points, I guess, if you want to call it that, of what kind of people are involved in this shit. So,
well, before we dive into that,
yep.
Tansey, have you? I saw you sent me this text. It was so weird. You were in a Speedo with a bunch of tacos on a ghost bed, and I don't understand. I don't understand what the context of that was. Was that like for this, like our sponsor? Did they buy the tacos for you, or was that just for me? Was that only intended to try to turn me on, or what was going on there?
Yeah, they heard that story about how you like to eat chocolate in the ghost bed, or something that you told on a previous episode. Right. They knew that I like tacos, and so they had tacos delivered to me in my ghost bed. Because that's what a loyal sponsor of Drinking Bros and Tetherball and this show, Failure, that's what they do. That's what they do for you, is they
really want the extra mile.
In bed. No, but I'm glad you brought that up, because Ghostbed has been a loyal sponsor, and I wish you wouldn't do this to me, because I don't have the ad pulled up on my phone. So now I'm forced to just ad-lib the whole thing right now.
Ghostbed.com/Drinking Bros. 30% off everything on the store. When you go to ghostbed.com/Drinking Bros, they have the best beds. I have 4 of them myself. They have the Ghost Lux, which is a cooling mattress. They got a new one called the 3D Matrix, which is cooling plus soft as shit. They got great sheets. The pillows are great. You can buy the shredded pillow, and it comes stuffed, right, with this really soft foam shredding. And you can pull some out if it's too thick, or you can call them. They will send you more if you want it bigger, right? It's the best company in the world. And once the whole pandemic thing started, they extended their benefits from first responders, police, fire, and et cetera, EMS, and then veterans and active military, to teachers, nurses, all the people that work hard on a day-to-day basis to make sure our country's taken care of. So this is the kind of organization that if you really believe that principle that every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in, then this is the kind of company you want to deal with, frankly. And that's why we've been with them for like 6 years now.
Wow. That was probably the best ad read I've ever heard in my life. From a real professional, from our special guest. So yes, go to ghostbed.com/Drinking Bros, and that gets you, is it 40% off, right?
It's 30% off, but they've got, who knows, they've got a July 4th deal going on too. They have these crazy ass deals all the time, so you really just got to go in there and check it out sometimes, to be honest.
our neighbor just bought one because they listened to the show and they wanted to support us, and so they went and bought one. They got a very quick delivery. They were really impressed about how fast they got their ghost bed in. They're already talking about the adjustable base and how it makes their morning newspaper reads, because they are older and they still read things. I think they do it on their phone. It's not an actual paper, but their morning reading time in the ghost bed on that adjustable base, they have said, is clutch. So,
yeah, it is. I've got the adjustable base in my room. Actually, you can turn your bed into a couch. Basically, it's ridiculous. Completely unnecessary. But look, you know what I mean. Cheetos are unnecessary, and I ate those too. So fuck off.
Yeah, it's because you rich. But I you know who's not sleeping on a ghost bed, and it sucks, is that these kids with the Southwest Key thing. Obviously, they're not getting to sleep on ghost beds. They'll probably never get the opportunity to sleep on ghost beds because they're going to be trafficked into foster care systems, which, I'm glad you brought the foster care system up, because a massive percent of people who end up becoming trafficked started in the foster care system. And it's not saying that foster homes are diddling children and trafficking kids, but what I've learned from working with the DSS and some of these other agencies is that when you're put into the foster care system, you're into neighborhoods, and people in those neighborhoods know that you're in the foster care system, and then it's easier to take advantage of you, right? Because they know that you don't have a family, they know you need a father figure or a mother figure, and so they're able to exploit that. So it's not necessarily that the foster parents are bad, right? It's the neighborhoods that oftentimes do these foster cares. And then, a lot of these foster kids, a lot of people don't understand, is it's not like the movies, like the Angels in the Outfield, right? They're not just foster kids for a couple of days, a couple of months. Some of these kids are 8 years, 9 years, 14 years in the foster care system until they graduate high school, and then they're just put back out onto the street. And so when you don't have any family dynamic, and also oftentimes if you're in the foster care of that system, you're going to several different foster houses, which is a very traumatic experience in itself. So you got a lot of these kids that are wanting attention. Oftentimes teenagers we know are rebellious anyway, and experimental and rebellious. And so when you have a rebellious experimental teen that doesn't have any kind of family upbringing, coupled with the traumas of foster care systems, oftentimes they begin to almost prostitute themselves, which will often lead to being trafficked because they don't have any confidence and they don't have anybody to talk to. So now you're talking about hundreds of thousands of undocumented children who are in these Southwest Key homes. These, I guess, I don't know if I would call it a concentration camp, more or less.
Yeah, these are foster house. When we're talking about these places, like these aren't part of the normal foster system, or this is off grid, right?
So Department of Social Services has nothing to do with these homes, right? So you have Southwest Key, and this is my question to you, Dan.
Health and Human Services does have they control some of the kids at some point, and you can see that in the news right now that they have some control over some point. But the ones that are and this is part of these articles, by the way, that you could read. The kids that make their way into the private contractor hands are no longer. There's no longer any supervision or oversight by the federal government at all. Not that it's bad oversight. There's literally none.
So when they go into Southwest Key, which is privately owned, right? It's not a government program, right? Am I right on that? Yep. So they go into there, and then at what point, so you're saying that once they go to Southwest Key, this program here, after that, there's no oversight. So there's nobody going to check on them to see what's going on into these. These camps. And why is that? I mean,
it's because if you hire a contractor to watch the kids, then you have to hire another contractor to watch the people watching the kids. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of fucking system is that? Doesn't make any sense. We let our emotions get involved too much, and when we're talking about crime, in my opinion, ultimately things like child trafficking and terrorism, they're just forms of crime, right? And for crime to exist, you need means, motive, and opportunity, just like any other crime, right? And opportunity is the most important part of that, because that's the one that we can control the most, right? We can control that the most, and we can control it through enforcement mechanisms or protection or whatever it is. These people, like anybody else, prey on the weak. We all know the stats. If you have a sign in front of your home that says you have an alarm system, you're 63% less likely to get robbed, because people don't want to deal with that. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You just got to be faster than the other guy. That's why prostitution murders go unsolved at a much higher rate than any other group of people to get murdered, right? And it always will, because no one gives a fuck about it. It's why Jack the Ripper wasn't targeting socialites in England. He was killing hookers. You know what I mean? There's a reason for that shit. And these kids have no one to speak for them. There's mothers against drunk driving. Where's the mothers against fucking child trafficking? That's the organization I want to see.
when you start using hashtags like Save Our Children or Save the Children, I know my wife was really into that at the time. She actually got one of the Dixon shirts that was pedos get stilettos. And my wife being a social media marketing manager at the time for another company, she knew right away that she said, you can't use hashtag Save Our Children or hashtag Save the Children, that you'll get buried on social media and they will just take that post and dump it way down. And so almost like a shadow banning type deal using that hashtag.
Right.
I use hashtag Save the Bees.
There's a reason for that, by the way. There's a reason for that. So a lot of the public awareness, what Mike referred to earlier as hashtag awareness, from the right especially, was just a rebuke to the anti-Trump stuff. Anytime anybody says anything negative about Trump, the right would collectively say, well, what about child trafficking? Look, I'm fine with prioritizing child trafficking. What I'm not fine with is trying to weaponize for political theater children being raped. That's what I'm not okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think in the height of, and I'm not saying that it has anything to do with Trump, but in the Trump era, there was a lot of sex trafficking stuff coming out, right? Like, well,
I mean, Epstein was arrested,
thing. Right. And so it was on the forefront of everybody's minds. I don't, like, my wife doesn't give two fucks about Trump, but she really gives a shit about this whole sex trafficking thing. And I think she was, super offended that people politicized it and used it as, okay, well, if you're against sex trafficking, then you're against Biden. And so a lot of our staunch liberal friends were really getting onto her and actually defending these. And my wife was like, listen, I don't give two fucks about, she's like, I may or may not even vote because I've got 3 kids and I got too much shit to do. But it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with literally, let's fucking save our kids. When you look at Hollywood, for example, it's almost that Hollywood, I think, creates a lot of this, not sex trafficking, but it makes it cool for sexual abuse. I mean, you've got people like R. Kelly, Woody Allen, Mike Tyson, Pee Wee Herman, Tupac, all these guys, Jeffrey Jones, the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off fucking was dealing some 14-year-old kids, and he solicited him for nude photos at 14, and all he got was 5 years probation for it. You know what I mean? Kevin Spacey and all these guys. And so
all that stuff seems to fade into the background. Kevin Spacey, where'd that go? Ghislaine Maxwell, where'd she go? I don't even know. I mean, fades away.
Roman Polanski.
I think that Ghislaine Maxwell is being pretty useful right now because ever since you saw Epstein get arrested and stay in prison for a while, and nothing really happened. I haven't done the latest data on this, but as of June, since Ghislaine Maxwell had been arrested, 43 major sex trafficking rings globally had been taken down by law enforcement. And now maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not, but that's a pretty big we've got that saying where there's smoke, there's fire. That's a pretty big coincidence. What my sincere hope is that the federal government made a deal with this woman and said, hey, you let us take all these people down and then we'll set you free. And then when everybody's taken down and they set her free, somebody's waiting outside to shoot her in the fucking face in the street. That's what I hope happens.
Do you think the government's going to allow that because of the social elites that may be involved in that? I mean, we talked about the Epstein's list and who was on that list.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the government's going to allow them to get that close to?
I think here's what I think. I think that the people in charge in the U.S. and the U.K. specifically want to handle this themselves, right? Because it's like a fucking dirty cop that wants to arrest a guy before anybody else gets to him so he can fucking shoot him and throw a gun. I mean, that's a trope from movies and shit. But Biden right now can prosecute these things. And when I say Biden, I don't mean that he was directly involved, but what I mean is Biden is a representative of the establishment politics in America, right? He's going to do anything he can to protect the Clintons, for sure. Anything that he can cognitively.
Yeah, they had to tell him this morning that there was no Saturday morning cartoons on and to put his Cocoa Puffs away. Let's be real.
But to be fair, my wife had to tell me the same thing. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah, but you're not quote unquote leading the free country. Thank God.
But I do think that we'll see a lot of prosecutions at the lower and mid level, and no one above that will ever get touched. That's what I think. Yeah. But anyways, back to Southwest Key. So let's stay on top of here.
And before the Southwest, so. Like we're calling this government-sponsored trafficking. So far we've talked about there's calls to the families or they're being moved from one facility to the next. But I guess you brought up a great point. Means, motive, and opportunity. And so what's the motive for the government? What's in it for the government as far as the movement of these children in our own country from one place to another into these other sort of like off-grid systems. Why? Why do you think that is?
The why in government is always the same answer. It's power and money, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They want more power, and they want the ability to translate their power into money. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good segue actually into more about Southwest Key and their shady banking practices. So what this organization does is they start the board members of Southwest Key. They start these cutouts, which is what we call them in the intelligence community, cutout organizations that are owned by the board members of Southwest Key. So they've got 6 board members, I think. The people that are on that board, including Raphael Chacon, Riyad Baklam, who owns Shockback, and a couple other organizations. What they've done, they created a company called Rander Ventures. They'll go out and buy properties with their private capital, and then using funds loaned to them from Southwest Key. This is actually from a research article in 2018 that the New York Times did, and they dropped it. The New York Times did this because they were trying to pin it on Trump, and when they couldn't pin it on Trump, when it went deeper and further back in history than him, they dropped it completely.
Imagine
imagine that. So they take funds, which are federal grant funds, into a nonprofit. They borrow the money, right, into their private organization. They go buy these rundown, like an abandoned Walmart or a warehouse, and a bunch of other warehouses all over Texas. Brownsville, Texas, there's a big one. There's some near El Paso. There's a bunch in Arizona. They buy these places, and then they from their private company, rent them back to Southwest Key at 10 times the rate that they should be doing. They're just embezzling money from the federal government. That's all it is. And that money 100% is going back to people in administrative levels and political levels in the government. There's no question about that, and there's evidence to that effect. Southwest Key was under investigation in 2018 in Arizona, and these people, the founder and his wife, who had historically only given money to Democratic candidates, all of a sudden gave 2 large donations to the Arizona GOP party, and all of a sudden the investigation ended. This is 2 weeks before their election that year. So if you can find a little bit, there's a lot more behind it, right? It's like termites. So these are the kind of people we're talking about. And I can give you some actual good hard data on this.
Whatever you're talking about, like what links, we can just put that in the description later too, guys. If you're listening, you never watched this, just go to my YouTube channel, and in the description we'll drop any relevant links we have. So
right. So between 2008 and 2018, which is primarily the Obama administration, right? Mm-hmm. Southwest Key collected $1.7 billion in federal grants, including 600. Yeah. Oh yeah. The company loaned out that money to real estate developers and all sorts of other things. Now, I don't know what the law is on 501c3 loaning money to private companies and people. I don't know. That doesn't seem like it should be legal, but maybe it is. I don't know. In one instance, Southwest Key's board members, using their private companies like I told you before, they were renting a building out for $30,000 a month. And then the private company that they owned was charging Southwest Key, the nonprofit, $117,000 per month for the same building. There you go, buddy. That's great, right? They rented out a place, Conroe CHS, $3 million in rent, with the vast majority of the money going back to the executives of the Southwest Key organization. Same thing in Brownsville. They are using this. So there's a federal cap. If you run a 501c3 that does federal contracts, you can't be paid more than the highest paid non-presidential federal employee, which means the speaker, a congressperson, like $187,000 a year. That's all you make, right? So to subvert that, they set up these shell companies and provide services, quote unquote services, real estate, whatever else, back to the 501c3 and severely overcharge for it. There's nobody, if the people aren't watching the kids, they're damn sure not watching the money, right? So they're just laundering money from the federal government, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And this is just one of these companies, by the way. It's unbelievable. So that's the money side of it. That's who they are as people. They're using this. And what my CBP contacts have told me is this: they get these kids, they send them, they keep them for 72 hours, try to find. This is just the timeline. Kids come over the border unaccompanied. CBP grabs them. They have them for 72 hours maximum. That's all they're legally allowed to hold them for. They try to contact their families. Their families say, no, we're not going to pick them up because you'll deport us. Fuck. So then they send them to HHS. HHS does COVID testing. CBP never sees them again. HHS keeps some of them, sends the rest to places like this. They use MVM Inc. to traffic them, right, alone to these places like Southwest Key programs. And
without full knowledge of the states or jurisdictions in which they're taking them, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And with no real oversight. No oversight at all from the federal government. And they end up in these places, and they basically sit there for years. They sit there for years until they turn 18, at which point it is legal to deport them. So Southwest Key holds these kids in detention facilities, makes billions of dollars, loans that money out, makes even more money, right, for their executives off the books by embezzling it. And then when it comes time for these kids to turn 18, they fucking boot them. They deport them anyway. They're just holding these kids basically like cash in escrow until it's time to fucking kick them out of the country.
So do you think, or have you seen any evidence of these, like Southwest Key as an example, making money from people out of country, like whether it's Mexico or Guatemala, Honduras, whatever, where they're basically going to pay the coyotes to get these people across the border, and they're actually funding the movement of the kids out of country into ours as a way to leverage it as an investment?
I mean, that would be the first place I would look. I mean, follow the money is a good rule in any kind of law enforcement or investigative or intelligence operation. People are motivated by money in a way that is, to be frank, bizarre to me. I grew up poor as shit. The typical person just learns to live with what they have. You know what I mean? Yeah. But some of these people, there's a switch that flips in their mind, and they're able to flex a level of cognitive dissonance that I thought should be impossible for a conscious and moral human being to do. But it's the regular for them. So now we can get into this is people that are willing to take advantage of the system and make money on it. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. But then you hear about the abuse and the treatment of these kids and the conditions under which they live for years before finally just being kicked the fuck out of the country, right? In July 2018, I'm just going to give a couple of examples because I don't have time to be here all day. And if I would rip the fucking screen off my computer if I read all these in a row. Yeah. In July 2018, a worker at one of Southwest Key's shelters in Phoenix was accused of molesting a teenage girl in their care. Then in September the same year, an HIV-positive worker was convicted of sexually abusing 7 teenage boys at an Arizona shelter as well. That shelter was temporarily shut down after staff members were again accused of physically abusing 3 other children. Southwest Keys had closed 2 shelters that year already, paid $73,000 in fines due to abuse and allegations of mismanagement. This is all just in 2018. And then one former employee reported in 2018 that they were told to prevent the children from hugging and comforting one another. And we know what that is. If you've ever studied any kind of brainwashing or torture methodologies, if you followed any of these sex cults, like the weird one that was in Texas or Louisiana, I don't remember the name of it, or any of the other ones, what they do is they dehumanize you. They take your ability to comfort each other away. If you've ever been through SEER training, like divide and conquer, dividing people up and not letting them comfort one another, things like that, that's a big deal. And we saw it again with these, excuse me, if you followed that story about the Canadian re-education programs for the native kids up there, and how they weren't allowed to speak their language or wear their clothes or talk to their family members because they were trying to integrate them into Canadian society and all that stuff. That's exactly what this shit is.
Which that ended in the 90s, so that's not even something that's super old.
No, that just ended like 2 weeks
re-education
ago.
camps in Canada. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. So the last part of this for me is what exactly is happening. We see some of these small when I say small, I mean like there are a couple of examples of how these kids are being taken advantage of, and etc. So when an unaccompanied child illegally crosses the border from Mexico into the United States, they're temporarily held in that Border Patrol facility. Then they get transferred to HHS. They can't spend more than 72 hours before being released into HHS custody. Border Patrol again tries to find their family members or somebody that'll take them, and the family members routinely say no. And they have their contact information, by the way, because those people who are their family members that are here now, the reason they're able to contact them is because they were part of Obama's catch and release. They didn't have the facilities to detain them, and the left, regardless, Obama, by the way, deported more people than all presidents before him combined. Mm-hmm. So every president, all the way up until Obama, didn't deport as many people as he did in his 8 years.
Yeah.
But he still couldn't get enough out. So they just started catch and release. And a big part of the a big part of the problem, it wasn't just Obama, it was fucking Republicans. It was Mitch McConnell refusing to assist in helping get federal immigration judges appointed and confirmed. All right? About 1/4 of those federal immigration judge positions were active under the Obama administration. So the choice that the Obama administration made was to catch and release, which is to give people an NTA, a notice to appear, and then just release them into America.
Yep.
Right. That was their choice.
Yeah, I dealt with that a lot at the border here. I mean, we're right by the Canadian border, but it wasn't just Canadians coming in. I remember very distinctly there was a shift, and because previously, if we encountered someone who was undocumented, our protocol was to contact Border Patrol because we had a substation that was like 10 minutes from where I worked, and they would come, they would literally take them into custody, take them to the substation, and they begin the process of deportation and moving them out. I think that's what would happen normally. And so we would discover these houses of people just piled in there, and we would report it. There'd be, an action taken, and then eventually they would just pull up and go, oh yeah, they would write out this ticket and literally hand them that notice to appear and be like, all right, well, see ya in a year.
Yeah, basically. And I don't know, the federal government has not published how many people don't show up for their court appearances, but I'm guessing it's the vast majority, because why the fuck would you show up? So continuing, HHS, they go into HHS custody. The average child spends 31 days in their custody before being placed in the care of a family member, sponsor, which is a relative, or a charity organization like Southwest Key. So right now, there are 4,500 unaccompanied kids being held at 52 facilities across Texas, and that's about a quarter of the population that are being held by HHS right now. So there's about 20,000 or so being held by HHS. But we know that is the minority, right? That's the small portion. The bigger portion are now with these private contracting organizations. And it's just a math problem at that point. We know from January to June of this year, 122,000 kids came across the border unaccompanied. 122,000 children in the first half of this year came across the border unaccompanied. Now we've seen some of this stuff start to come to a head in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott, wheelchair, I call him, announced a plan to revoke the licenses of all these HHS facilities. Now he's done some other stuff along these lines this year as well, what you could refer to as nullification, which is where a local or state government tells the federal government to go fuck itself, right? Which is, the 9th and 10th Amendments exist for a fucking reason, by the way. Anyways, HHS is trying to come back at him with the support of the ACLU for some reason, that these orders appear to violate federal law, which is, technically they're correct, right? But federal law doesn't trump state law in all these instances. That's the reason the 9th Amendment says that if something isn't enumerated in the Constitution or these first 8, then it goes back to the people. And the 10th says it goes back to the states. You know what I mean? That's the whole purpose of the way this fucking system of government was set up. It's a check and balance, authoritarian power from a centralized federal government. It's what I was ranting about, I suppose, on American Party the other day about the Constitution and how it was written. The position of HHS is if the facilities would be forced to close, then thousands of these children would be scattered across the U.S. most likely placed in emergency shelters built on military bases or in convention centers. I'll tell you this, I damn sure would rather have soldiers looking after these kids than I would people in Southwest Key programs. If that's our fallback plan, that should have been plan number one in the fucking first place. Why not have the National Guard looking after these kids? Why not have people that have taken it upon themselves to pick up a weapon and fight for their country instead of somebody that's trying to profiteer off the misery and suffering of children? That seems like maybe a good idea. I don't know. I just work here. The kids. So I'm going to go through a little bit more of this data, and then I'll talk about some of the abuse stuff. So in March of this year, Border Patrol agents took 18,890 unaccompanied children into custody. That's 1 month. And then in April, it was 23,000. As of April, HHS alone was holding 16,000 kids. Now it's more than that, right? It's about 20 now. And then in April, 8,500 kids were living in these emergency facilities already, with 4,000 more waiting to be transferred from detention centers along the border to the emergency facilities. Border Patrol currently is transferring 507 children per day into HHS custody. 507 every single day.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah. It's projected that by September, roughly 22 to 26,000 unaccompanied minors will arrive each month and require HHS care. More kids are staying in church shelters in Houston, as well as tent facilities outside San Antonio and Midland that are normally used to house workers for oil drill sites and stuff like that. The largest temporary shelter is being built at Fort Bliss right now. We're talking about refugee camps here, folks, inside of the United States in 2021. We're talking about refugee camps like existed in the 1980s on the Afghan-Pakistan border, right?
Yeah.
That existed in Palestine, shit like that. This is unacceptable. And the richest, most powerful country in the world, like we like to pat ourselves on the back and talk about it. We can't take care of kids. I don't give a shit where the kid came from, man. I don't care what law they broke. It's a fucking child. Mm-hmm. If we can't muster our financial and moral resources to take care of these children, then maybe we don't deserve to exist.
Well, it's certainly indicative of where our real values lie. I mean, like the proof is undeniable, right? Like how you treat the most vulnerable of people. Again, like you said, no matter how they showed up at your doorstep, they're there. And if they're weak and incapable of being able to care for themselves, how we treat them is a sign of where we're headed as a people, for sure.
Right. Well, and the overwhelming or the fact that the HHS program itself is overwhelmed, I think is intentional, and I think that this is the reason. It costs twice the amount to house a kid in one of these emergency shelters or in one of these contracted agencies that it does for HHS to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And they're getting a lower level of care as well. The influx of unaccompanied minors is right now it's costing the U.S. government about $60 million per week. $60 million per week. Right? It is the numbers here are staggering. And now we're seeing these cases of abuse. There are kids that are being that are refusing to eat because the food they're being given is like 3-4 day old chicken, right? That is now, I mean, I don't know what you know about salmonella, but that's not a good thing. Yeah. They're being forced to wear a mask everywhere still for some reason. And the weird part about that is that they're manually removing the metal plate out of the mask on the nose because kids are taking them out and trying to kill themselves. They're having to isolate kids because they're having to isolate 10 and 12-year-olds because they're trying to kill themselves because conditions are so bad. So, and to be honest, if I'm a kid at 12 years old and my entire family has abandoned me and they're like, hey, go with this stranger, this guy that's a career criminal, he's going to get you to the United States and everything's going to be okay. My first experience is walking through the desert and almost dying. My second experience is this asshole throwing me over a 25-foot fence. My third experience is the entire federal government abandoning me. And then they call my parents on the phone, and my parents are like, hey, you know what? You know, cool kid and all, but I don't want to get deported, so they're your problem now. And then my next experience is being put into a system where I get moved from place to place, fed bullshit food, left on concrete floors in warehouses. I'm getting raped by people around me and people with AIDS, apparently, if you're in fucking Phoenix. And then by the time it's my 18th birthday, maybe now I've got some control over my life, they deport me back to the same shithole I came from in the first place. This is a cycle of abuse that it's some of the worst shit that I've literally ever heard in my life. I can't.
How many of these 18-year-olds are actually end up getting deported versus just kicked out and they're just stay in the country and are trying to fend for themselves here after that point?
I mean, either this is by the way, it's a good question to ask. I don't know the answer to it, but neither one of those is a good solution.
Yeah.
Right? They get kicked out and they hate America. This is how you create insurgencies, by the way. If you're trying to create an insurgency, you let a bunch of people stay around, hang around, right? You treat them poorly. You take all their shit away. You take away their dignity, right? You take away their access to upward mobility. And then you just cut them loose into the wild without ever fixing the problem. This is how we created the Taliban. This is how we created ISIS. We do this over and over again. And it's because people don't give a fuck about other people. All they care about is making little quippy political points and making money.
Yeah. Yeah. So where does the intersection of, is it just, are they related? Not maybe not directly, but just there's some overlap between this form of trafficking that we're primarily talking about today into like the sex trafficking world, or like, oh, we're going to go over here and we're going to harvest organs on this side of things. Like where's the overlap between this process as a starting point and where a child who turns into a young adult may end up? Like,
right.
Well,
we talked about it before, right? It's means, motive, and opportunity. If I, as a conscious human being, am creating something as a byproduct of my action, and in this case, we're creating vulnerability in children as a byproduct of our action, then, and it gets taken advantage of, that falls on me, right? If me as a responsible gun owner, if I leave my Glock on my front porch and some guy in the middle of the night comes out, grabs it and shoots somebody with it, that's on me, right? And if I create the conditions under which these kids can be taken advantage of, that shit's on me, and it is on all of us.
Yeah.
It is on every single one of us. So I don't think that the government has a program where they're intentionally trafficking kids into sexual slavery. That's not the case.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation, in my opinion, is far worse. Because if that was happening, everybody would say, fuck that, and we would murder all of these people. But because it is done through political alliances and money and what I would consider immoral ambivalence, then nobody seems to care. And that is the real problem.
And what do you suggest, Dan? I mean, what kind of, obviously you have a big platform, right? With American Party, with Drinking Bros. And I get it, educating people is a big deal. But as I look at the comments in our YouTube section, a lot of people are like, man, these facts are great, but what do we do about it?
Yeah. Awareness is one thing, but what kind of actions can we take?
Right,
And it's a big deal. It's like everybody, I changed my profile picture to a rainbow. I support gays. I changed my profile picture to hashtag this, and I'm bringing awareness. But awareness is one thing, and it's absolutely necessary. You got to know what you're dealing with. But
for me, for the 22 push-ups a day, I get a lot of flack because I've always said from the beginning, I fucking hate the 22 push-ups a day thing. I get it. Awareness is great and everything, but how about pick up the fucking phone? Instead of doing 22 push-ups, maybe it's do 22 push-ups and then go ahead and call one of your buddies, call one of your friends. Like, we all know that one dude that we can say in our brains, like, man, I bet you that dude's only going to last another 10 years before he smokes himself. Or if he smokes himself, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, how about why are we not calling that one dude once a week, twice a week? But no, we'll do our 22 push-ups and we'll feel good and we'll get the little I got your 6 tattooed on your arm, whatever. I mean, that's all great. So for this, Dan, my thing is great. We have the awareness. Like, we know what's going on. We got the Southwest Key thing. I mean, what do we protest? Do we go stand out like it's an abortion clinic and we go out there and stand out, or do we try to get to with the parents. I mean, I know one of the things that you mentioned was that the parents won't go get the kids because they are afraid of getting deported. Is there a way that we can do public service announcements that say, you're not going to get deported, come get your fucking kids, and we'll deal with the whole deportation thing later, but come get your kids so they don't end up in a concentration camp? Is that something?
Well, I mean, you know, people aren't, they're not going to believe that shit, but I'll say this, you know, my personal job is to inform people what's going on, but I do think quite a bit about what the average person could do to stop this shit. The first thing, well, the only thing you can really do, and this is not the only thing you can really do, but the most important thing you can really do is take power back from these people who have stolen it away from us. And so what do I mean by that? When this conversation came up about the Greg Abbott thing, about the executive order he signed to deal with this, and you know, it we like people in this country. We seem to be obsessed with romanticizing individual people. People love Trump. People love Obama. People love these people. Fuck those people. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit about people. I care about principles. If your values don't align, you know, in a way that we can live together, if your values aren't consistent with humanity and placing the welfare of children and as Mike said, those who are most vulnerable above all else, then you're fucked, right? That cannot be allowed to happen. And I say this shit all the time. If we can't afford to take care of our sick and our children and our elderly and our veterans and our whatever else, then we don't deserve to exist, right? If the system we've set up can't afford to take care of the people who've taken care of us and the people who can't take care of themselves, then we do not deserve to exist. Politico ran a story about this Greg Abbott thing, about him shutting down these HHS facilities. And they reached out to Dan Crenshaw, and they reached out to Ted Cruz and asked their opinion about it. Crenshaw, in typical fashion, that guy's a real piece of shit in my opinion. He was like, well, I don't really know enough about this to say anything. Really, you were a fucking congressman in Texas, in a border state. Somebody that routinely speaks out on border issues. And you don't have the fucking balls to say something when kids are getting mistreated? Really? And Ted Cruz, who looks like a gay mortician and is a giant piece of shit as well. These guys, all they do, they wake up every morning and stand in front of a mirror and look at themselves and go, you know what, I'm right. I'm smart. I'm pretty. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Fuck you.
Yeah, I think there's a deserved level of cynicism to say, like, you don't end up in these positions. You just don't end up there without already having sort of like
burned everybody else's shit down.
Drank the Kool-Aid that says, I'm in it for me. I'm in it for me.
We can see that in the police department.
We the people. I'm in this for the people. But at the end of the day, like, and that creates a whole, man. It creates a whole other conversation, I guess, because that's where we started. Is like, okay, what are we going to do about this? You have to get to the root cause of the problem, and I feel like we're living in a culture where as long as I've got this thing in my hand, like I've got the latest version of this. I'm holding a phone in my hand, my iPhone 12 mini or whatever. Like I've got the Apple phone in my hand or whatever, and I can get coffee, a coffee that I like, and my Netflix subscription is valid. As long as I've got these things and kind of relatively entertain myself and feel good about myself, then the rest of the world can basically, suck it because I'm fine. So you're fine to trade these. You trade in that responsibility we have to participate in our system and turn it over to people who then abuse it.
Correct.
And now,
that's exactly what it is.
So now what, right? So you got to that's a big fight. So the symptom of the government basically being complicit in kids suffering in these places in our very borders has to start with maybe starting to care about like what the hell is even happening in your own community and build from there. But like it's a daunting thing to think about, the machine that has been allowed to be created basically while we're comfortably watching television.
Well, I've always said, Mike, that when, as a citizen of the United States, when we talk about these things that are so grandiose that we can't really do anything about it, like the average citizen can't go out there and fuck with Southwest Key. It's just not going to happen. But as an average citizen, you could go out there every day and do things to make the world a better place. And then in Key, like if we're all doing that, everything gets better. I think from a law enforcement perspective, I think one of the things that could greatly help out with trafficking and sexual abuse and children abuse and all those things is simply by bridging the gap with Department of Social Services. I mean, most cops don't have very good stories with the Department of Social Services, and I would probably venture to guess that DSS workers probably don't get as well with cops as they would like to. And I think like if you're a beat officer, if you're managing a beat, you need to, especially if you're training a rookie, get in touch with the DSS worker in your beat, in your area, and find out which kids are the most vulnerable for trafficking. What are the teenagers that have been in this foster care for 8 years that might be on your beat, and reach out to them empathetically. And that's part of community policing, right? But I don't know that as a cop, anybody ever really sat down and talked to me about DSS or talked to me about specifically, they always say like, here's some things to look out for to see if a kid might be trafficking, but it was always very vague, right? It wasn't, hey, reach out. DSS knows all of this, right? They know all of the kids that are vulnerable, the ones that might be being trafficked. They have a lot of intel, but they feel like they can't talk to the police because it's just never been done before. A DSS agent's never called the beat officer and just been like, hey man, can I do a ride along with you this week? And you're like, you know what I mean?
Well,
what if
people
DSS got in a cop car with you?
People like to tell you to stay in your lane in pretty much every avenue of adult life, whatever it happens.
we lost Dan. His battery literally fell apart.
Which is fine because we are rolling into the hour-and-a-half mark.
Yeah, we're coming up on it.
What I would like to leave in this show is just your local LEOs, you local citizens, you DSS guys, even your EMS, your medics. Right? We're all in these small jurisdictions. We're in these smaller districts. There's nothing that says that you can't call your local DSS agent and just say, hey, look, I work in this neighborhood. What kind of information can you give me? Would you be willing to give me? Come get inside of my ambulance and ride with me and see what's going on in my world. Come and get in my cop car, ride with me. Let's chat. Let's have coffee. And then let's find out what kind of the problem areas are. Where's there a foster home nearby? Something that we can be on the lookout. And these are something we can do on a local level and show empathy. And if more cops are doing that across the country, if more cops are really getting involved and showing that child trafficking and human trafficking is a big deal, then maybe people kind of could stop doing it. I love how Phoenix, they stopped calling pimps and they started calling them traffickers. And it really, really put a different perspective on law enforcement by calling pimps traffickers. And what it kind of did behind the scenes was it created a mindset. Well, it created a mindset in the officers' minds that the prostitute isn't the problem. She's the victim, right? Because if you're calling the pimp the trafficker, all of a sudden you see this person as somebody who's being trafficked. And just that wordplay alone means a little bit more to the police officer than hooker and pimp.
These are a lot of good, like low-level day-to-day things you could do, and I appreciate that. A lot of people, they see the enormity of the issues in the world today, and they feel like, what could I possibly do about that? And it's overwhelming. It's depressing. As I've done these investigations and compiled all this information, it's been rough, man. Honestly, and there's a reason why if you work in sex crimes, particularly child sex crimes, there's a limit on how long you can do that before you have to come off and do something else for a while and get counseling. I understand that now, but people get weighed down and then I guess demotivated by the enormity of the issue. Yeah. And I'll tell you this: you can't solve everything. You can't, but there are very frequently opportunities in your life where you can do something, right? Yeah. I might not be able to stop hunger, but I can stop that dude right there from being hungry right now. Like I can end his hunger right now. And whatever you want to call that, charity or whatever the fuck, whether you're religious or not, I'm personally not religious. I don't care about any of that stuff. Whatever motivates you to do that, keep your fucking eyes open and pay attention for the opportunities you were provided on almost a daily basis to make somebody else's life better.
A lot of warriors go to church, right? Church is important to a lot of the warrior classes, you want to call it or whatever. Soldiers like to rely on that. A lot of cops go to church. And I know that a lot of you guys sit in church and you're already kind of like, oh, if the guy breaks in the door right now, this is where I would go and this is how I would take him down. If an active shooter came through that door, this is what I would do and this is how I would react. But like, and those are good things to do for being a protector, but you could also sit there and look at the children in your church. Just glance over at them and look at them and see what is, is there somebody sitting too close to them that's getting a little bit more weird? Be a little bit more observant going in your community, your neighborhood. When that kid's just sitting on the sign and writing graffiti on the sign, instead of being like super pissed off and making that kid the enemy, he's obviously lashing out. He's reaching out. He's trying to do something for attention. Maybe we take a step back and we say, what's going on in that kid's household? And we start paying a little bit more attention, and maybe we don't find anything, and that's fine. And we don't have to dig in. I'm not telling you to put on your ghillie suit and go look out, but just merely being more observant of things around you. You never know what opportunity might come in contact with you. You might be able to go out and just have a normal conversation with this kid. And that might be the first normal conversation he's had with him in person. And it could change his life. Might not have anything to do with sex trafficking or human trafficking, but simply being observant, especially if you're in church. I mean, we all know that there is a lot of kids being diddled in churches. It happens. It sucks. But if we're going to look out for active shooters, I would say that there's probably more kids getting diddled in church than are being actively shot in church. So you should be just as observant to that as you should be to planning out.
What you're describing is just personal accountability, right? If you have the ability to stop evil and you don't, then the evil is on you. You know what I mean? And I say the same thing about like what I said before about being able to help somebody every day. Generally speaking, you're provided that opportunity. And here's what happens: if you're a conservative person, I personally don't care about the left and right version of politics. I just kind of take all these things as they come. But if you are a conservative and you're out there and you're trying to figure out ways at this point in American history to limit the power of government, the way you limit the power of government today as an individual is you box them out. All these social programs that have run amok, that take advantage of people, that put people in unfortunate circumstances, that block their access to upward mobility and all this other bullshit. You can stop that shit by solving the problem before the government gets involved, right? If you're an entrepreneur, go out there and fucking help somebody else become one, right? Give them the tools. This is what mentorship and leadership has always been all about. It's not about you being in charge of shit. It's about you taking what you've learned and passing it on to other people so the most amount of people can succeed in life. That's what it's about. And if
it's got to be a cumulative effort from going from ignorance. And I think you said something earlier, Dan, that I really appreciated, that you were talking about principles, right? Like you live by, you got to live by principles. And so like there's this ideal. We'll never, like when this country started and it's like this life, liberty, and the pursuit of, well, property, but happiness, right? Like this is the ideal. We can't say that every single person here has at all times. We talked about the blight of slavery, right? Like it hasn't been life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone at all times. But it's the principle, it's the ideal that drives us. And so if our principle is that, hey, we want to see vulnerable children not taken advantage of in any way, shape, or form in this country. And I'm at this point of like, I just became aware of this. Like a lot of people will be listening to this and they're like, holy shit, I didn't realize this. I didn't know this was happening this way. I just thought human trafficking was all about Liam Neeson going to get his daughter. And I thought that unless this kid was on some boat from some Arabian prince, that was the issue. And you start to see how much bigger it is. Well, the only thing between you and the principle that we're never going to live in a world in this country. I mean, speaking of religion, unless of course you have a vision of like the triumphant return of King Jesus and as all evil gets wiped out, right? Like that's one perspective. But this idea of you're never going to achieve this perfection, but you can make progress and you have to. Otherwise, what's the meaning of a principle in the first place? So like saying, what can I do today that like if my path is to eliminate, if you're passionate about that path of eliminating the suffering of the weak and vulnerable among us, especially children, if you're committed to that path, then you say, okay, what's the next step on that path for me to put my foot in front of the fucking other one and say, what do I do today? And then when you take that step, then you say, okay, what's the next best step I can take? And then as you include other people in that, and you alluded to this earlier too, like how do you conquer people? How do you create insurgencies? You divide them and you isolate them because we're a social people. So now to say, okay, I'm putting this foot in front of the other. How can I invite or encourage the participation of others to take these steps with me and know that, hey, I'm not going to solve this all, but I'm going to stay on the path of this principle. And if enough people are doing that, then change can be made, I guess. That's my soapbox.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's the reason that I started the show American Party is because just a rejection of mainstream politics, because I think it's tribalism, right? We get
100%.
You get 12 bullet points and you're meant to defend those regardless of the personality that shows up as part of your team. You have to defend them, and that is an insane way to go about life. That doesn't make any sense. There's no, like, you wouldn't be romantic about a certain math equation if it got proven wrong. Like, no, actually, you know what? I think this math equation is better. That doesn't make any fucking sense. You know what I mean? So there's 5. I'll just go through these right quick before we get off because I got to go record another show. But these are the 5 principles that I wrote for the American Party. The first one is just the thing that we've all raised our right hand and said, I'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The second principle is I will do something every day to help my country, my countrymen, or all men. And I think that one's important because you can't just make America great, right? And expect to exist in a vacuum of greatness when there's poverty and horrible things going on everywhere else. Third one is I will not allow those less fortunate or incapable of defending themselves to be harmed or taken advantage of in my country. Number 4 is as a leader, I will always eat last. And number 5 is
that's a good one.
Yeah.
So good.
Number five is I'll put more into this country than I take out of it. I think those are pretty basic things that every human being in this country can accomplish.
You take those 5 principles and say, put that as if you have a family, put those 5 principles to work in your family. You own a business, put those to work. Cops, if you're out there, that one is huge to me. The leaders eat last, because in police departments, it's like who can race to the top sometimes. And it's like a good leader is the one eating last. A good leader is the one that's pulling people toward greatness and not pushing them into something or riding on their high horse and not being in battle themselves. Those are good things, man.
Those were good. Hey, Dan, we appreciate you, man. Real quick, one last question. If you look at your Wikipedia, we see that you were in the military and you were private contractor, you worked for Black Rifle, then you went on to be a great podcaster and everything. At some point, though, you came out as being anti-rape. What made you come out as anti-rape? And 2, what was the Hollywood backlash on that?
Oh, yeah, it's rough. I mean, rape used to be really popular back in the day. Still is, actually. I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. Like, Harvey Weinstein made a lot of money, and everybody knew who was raping everybody. It was fine until everybody else knew about it. You know what I mean? It's like you were doing stuff weird at home, and then people come over for dinner, and you're like, oh, let's not do that while other people are around, right?
Right.
Just so everybody knows, a lot of people got prosecuted during Me Too. One of them wasn't Matt Damon, but he was there for all of that shit. He knew about everything, never did a goddamn thing about it. So, thanks for all your moral grandstanding, Matt, when you couldn't stop women from being raped because it wasn't cost efficient to do so, apparently.
Well, Dan, we appreciate you for being anti-rape way before it was even cool to be anti-rape. We thank you for taking the time to come on this show and for giving us the opportunity to even have this show. So, Mike, you got anything to close out on, homie?
No, man, guys, go. Obviously, a lot of you come when the show is being broadcast live on YouTube or Facebook. You have been familiar with me, but hey, you see the little tags down below. Definitely follow Dan and his shenanigans, and you can see him photoshopped into a lot of world events and other pop culture references. And check out the Drinking Bros podcast, obviously, and the American Party podcast, and
And Drinking Bros Tailgate Legend Show comes out tonight at 8 p.m.
Boom.
Big tailgate that we had this week, so you don't want to miss that. 8 p.m. on Drinking Bros Sports.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. And with that, we go guns up.
Giddy up.
Giddy up.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right, everybody.
Bye,
See you next time.
Happy 4th.